Hi, I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast. We are also Team Binge. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about season 2, episode 7, which is called
Headspace.
Head
Space.
Space.
Space. Space.
Very
Space.
good. I will make that echo in post, as they say in the biz. This one was written by Phoebe Walsh. Tom, who does Phoebe Walsh play in the show?
I believe Phoebe Walsh plays Nate Shelby of the Richmond soccer team.
So, the meanest person on earth.
The villain, apparently, of season 2.
Oh man. No, Phoebe Walsh is Jane. Jane the chess player, I believe is her full name.
Yes.
So she wrote this one. Good on her. Themes for this episode. Roy and Keeley establishing, I guess, boundaries or like going through Keeley establishing boundaries, Roy not knowing he was doing anything wrong.
Yeah. A lot of miscommunication between this couple.
Yes. And communication is, I'm told, somewhat important in a
It's
relationship.
the key to happiness.
Now, would you have thought when you were like, oh, Roy being in a relationship, would you have thought like clinginess or like a lack of personal space would have been his issue?
No.
Yeah, mine would have been like anger, maybe abusiveness, or, and I don't mean to laugh about those things, but that's
we
kind of his
got
personality.
Yeah, we got some angry Roy kind of towards the end of the episode where they finally confront each other, but
No,
Roy
I
needed.
felt like all those, that was totally even keeled reaction for both of them.
I guess
Keely
that's
the
true.
even keel, I call her now.
Even Keely. I like
Yes,
it.
exactly. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that. I mean, Roy kind of goes off the handle. She kind of goes off the handle when they eventually kind of have the conversation, but could have had a basic conversation the whole time, which I think Rebecca is pushing heavily throughout the episode. Just talk to the man, and you
Right.
can solve it. Heaven
No,
forbid we talk to each other more.
normal normal conversations does not make good TV, Tom.
I guess that's very true. I guess.
Actually, I would never mind. I'm not going to say it now.
Doesn't
Well,
make good podcast either.
no, not that. I was going to say what happens in this doesn't make good TV either. But I don't want to tip my hat or my hand, as they say.
I'm gonna go ahead and tip our hats in our hands. This was not a great episode.
Okay.
I don't think either of us. We did a little pre-episode discussion. Not our favorite. The fact that they make Nate this fun-loving character in season 1 and now have seemingly turned him full heel is just crazy.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So that leads us to our other theme is Nate dealing with his fame, I guess, or
Yeah.
dealing with, I guess, a level of success he hasn't seen before.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I'm jumping the gun on some stuff because we'll get into it a little bit more detail. But I like the concept of what they're trying to do with Nate, and I think his struggle with dealing with fame, and I think how, and I mean, we're not famous by any means, but like how famous people deal with social media and looking at comments and people commenting on your life that have no context or anything. I think it's an interesting concept to bring somebody in to kind of from that outsider's perspective, but he just goes off the rail just so quickly, and he's not famous. He had one little game that he made some play,
Right.
and they're trying to play it up like, oh, everybody on Twitter, everybody, all these commentators love him. He just haven't earned it. So I don't know.
Right.
Not again.
No, I'm 100% with you. The other main thing of the episode is Ted going to, not going to, kind of going to, settling on therapy.
He has a Sam and Diane relationship with therapy, on and off again.
I don't know that one time on this podcast we've ever used the term Sam and Diane correctly, because I don't know Cheers.
If I keep using it, it's going to fit somewhere.
That's true. Clock broken is right twice a day. I think that's exactly how that saying goes.
Nailed it.
Episode opens up with Keeley and Roy. The first thing I noticed was one, the book on the nightstand,
Yep.
which plays a pivotal role during this episode. What book is it?
Huge. It's Dan Brown's
The Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code.
Allow me to finish it for you.
Excuse me.
We like to do a bit where we finish each other's
Sandwiches.
That's the one. And then the song playing, which is I Got You, Babe by
Sonny and Cher.
Did you connect this with any other form of entertainment or media thing?
I connected this to Sonny and Cher.
Okay, so Groundhog's Day, the Bill Murray show.
The Bill Murray show. Movie.
The Bill Murray show, movie. In the biz, we call them either or.
Okay.
So this is the song that plays every morning when his
Yep,
alarm clock goes on.
it sure is.
And so this is clearly an homage to Groundhog's Day because they push in on an alarm clock, don't they? And then they play
Yeah.
this in the background.
Well, and I
You
think
think this is unintentional?
no. Initially, I was kind of like, it seems a little fast and loose because they only do one sequence of them waking up. But to Keeley's kind of point, like he's always around, he's always there. It's repeating itself over and over again. I
Right.
could see it.
Okay. Well, I thought it was a direct homage,
I think it's fast and loose.
as Richard would say.
Ooh, fancy.
Homage. All right. So we are seeing these pictures of Roy and Keeley's life together. And I, on the first watch, didn't really understand what they were trying to do here.
Agreed.
Just seemed like two people, like in a relationship, clearly kind of spending a lot of time together, even though they're not married. That's fine. I don't really understand it. The good book says no, but that's fine. I'm not gonna, anyways. So it's like supposed to show us how much time they spent together, but I didn't think of it as a negative thing.
I think the only thing it really shows us is Keeley uncomfortable. And you don't know why Keeley's uncomfortable. Like once this scene ends and it has Nate kind of walking down the street and him going to his parents' house,
Sure.
it just shows like a close up of Keeley's face and just her kind of like grimace or something. Like you didn't understand what was going on. From my perspective, I'm like, oh great, like let's just crap on another couple that we started to love on the show. And they're kind of moving in this direction. I thought they were gonna like try to break them up or create a bunch of animosity, which they obviously solved throughout this episode. But I was concerned.
I thought like there's towards the end where she like departs from him in the building and is going down the hallway, and then he like rejoins her. My thought was, oh, she has been trying to go to the bathroom this whole time, and he won't leave her alone to go to the bathroom. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this might, and that's not where it went. So I don't know.
Yep.
Anyways, then Nate visits his mom and dad, his mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
We established that Nate is obviously trying to win his parents' approval. We saw this in the restaurant one when he couldn't get that blasted. Oh, he did get the window seat eventually,
Yeah.
but he's trying to win his dad's approval. But we also see him constantly on Instagram.
Twitter. He's on Twitter.
So the thing he's scrolling down is not Instagram.
It's Twitter. Instagram has pictures. Twitter is more text.
I felt like the things he was looking at had pictures, Tom.
Twitter has the capability to do pictures.
Okay, well, that's fine. I knew it wasn't MySpace, and I knew it wasn't Bumble.
So that's why you didn't know.
That's fair. His dad tells him, he's like, I don't know what they're trying to do there. They're trying to like paint Nate as tragic here, or like that his dad's not giving. I mean, I think it is a big deal. He's on the paper, like maybe just a local paper.
Absolutely is.
That's a big deal. The dad doesn't necessarily react with a whole lot of pride or acknowledgement.
This show seemingly just hates or loves to explore father-son relationships.
Okay.
Like you have Ted and Henry, like Ted in last episode, like had a mental breakdown or a panic attack because of his relationship with Henry or lack of a relationship. You have Jamie and his father and all their back and forth. And now they're creating strife or issues with Nate and his father, which I thought is interesting because later when Ted gets to therapy, and I think at a certain point he says like, oh, we're just going to go through all this and you're going to tell me that's probably my parents' fault.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know if they're trying to kind of play that in where it's a lot of people struggle with that family dynamic in that relationship, but I thought his dad was on point in terms of like what he told him in terms of like trying to be humble and that kind of piece, but I guess the show likes it.
I guess like what were they trying to do here? Were they trying to be like, hey, this is what drives Nate to become the heel or to become the like kind of jerk that he becomes because even his own parents aren't giving him like the level of respect he deserves?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like that, this scene doesn't seem you don't need it. Like we've already seen Nate scrolling through his phone and being kind of like very, I don't want to say egotistical, but he's like all up in his head about this Wonder Kid thing that's on the internet that he's scrolling through it.
And then the other part of me is like, hey man, at a certain point, just acknowledge your dad's not a very good dad. Like, if he's not gonna like give you any kind of props that you're in the paper and he's gonna like purposely ignore it, maybe not a great dude. I don't know how the rest of the relationship goes. The dad wasn't like all that impressed with the table that Nate fought so hard to get him, which is fine. But at a certain point,
I didn't like that newspaper either. He was screaming at a newspaper.
That's fair. I mean, he's screaming at politicians. He's probably not going to give his son the time of day. I don't know. I did appreciate the box that was decorated like a leprechaun.
Yeah. No, so that's obviously a callback to season 1. Did he say like he decorated them, or he had like a niece or something that did?
I thought he had a niece that liked to decorate boxes, and
Okay.
that's how he started decorating the boxes as an arts and craft project with his niece.
Okay.
Right.
So, but he seemingly didn't know this box.
No, so the niece is just delivering
Okay.
decorated boxes to aunts and uncles.
That's a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. I'm realizing now that your nieces don't deliver you decorated boxes.
No, I'm crying right now.
Okay, well, I only have one niece and she's 3 months old and she hasn't delivered me anything. So, other than happiness. So, we then go to Ted entering therapy for his first appointment. And, Tom, my question for you, you have been anti-therapy for a very long time.
Hate him.
You just hate them.
Hate him. They're the worst.
No, not therapists. Therapy as a process.
Oh, yeah, they're not too great at it.
Okay. So, talk to us about therapy and why you think it's so bad.
I have all the answers.
That's fair.
I don't need somebody else to tell me my business.
That's fair.
And mind your own P's and Q's.
Wonderful. Thank you. So,
actually, you know what? I don't like you asking me that question.
So this scene opens up, and I am trying not to just like say what I don't like about this episode. There's like some funny stuff in here, but this bit where Ted comes in and he does the sitting thing, and I thought it took up about half the episode.
It was a minute. I timed it.
You timed it? It was a full minute?
A full minute of him
so
stumbling on the couch trying to figure out where to do how to sit.
It was 1/32 of the episode, but it seemed like a lot longer. And I guess we're just supposed to show that Ted is uncomfortable with therapy. Like,
could have done that with 30 seconds.
But I agree. This is half the time. Good point, Tom.
I mean, like, I love like the jokes where it's they start doing it and it's not funny, but then they keep doing it and it's still not
they
funny.
Double down.
And
there's certain jokes
keep
like that, yes.
doing it and then it eventually becomes funny. I felt like if you wanted to get to that point, you needed to do almost another minute of it. But they were not. They didn't go for it.
No,
listen.
I'm with you. There are certain jokes that work. This one was never gonna hit.
No.
I was just like, got it. He doesn't want to be in therapy.
Yep.
Like, I'm with you. Let's go.
Oh, and it's even after.
Maybe 3 minutes of this would have gotten us there, Tom. You're right. Triple down.
Well, I mean, Dr. Sharon did say, like, the second you stepped into this room, like, that is when this session started. So all of her, maybe she is getting some sort of extra bit by him laying down and moving his arms. Maybe Dr. Sharon knows, oh, so now he's got a problem with his uncle because of that. I don't know, man. I'm grasping.
My hope is everyone behind the camera was like, Jason, this is comedy gold, man. Keep improving. You're doing great. And then someone on set was like, this isn't very good. But it is what it is. I do find that, like, Dr. Sharon, the actress is great, but phenomenal. The character you don't like love in the beginning when she shows up because she's very cold and standoffish. Yep. But like very quickly, you're like, oh, she's trying to help here, Ted. Like, she's got some valid points. Like, I started to really like her more in this episode, and I was kind of like, what is Ted doing?
Well, it's funny
the
how
Church of Lasso's crumbling right now.
Yeah.
What's happening?
It's funny how you like a character more when she says so little. It's just like you see her in that circumstance and how she reacts to Ted.
Right.
Like, she doesn't blow up. She doesn't. And it's kind of what we loved about Ted, I would say more so in season 1, where people are incredibly mean to him, but he always has an optimistic sensibility and will always see the good in people. And I think Sharon does that too. Dr. Sharon, excuse me. She does that too here, but she does it in much more of a reserved fashion.
Right. And she's like, Ted, don't worry. Like, just the way she delivered that during this first session, you're like, Ted, she's got you. Like, just tell her what's wrong.
Yeah.
Because she clearly knows he's uncomfortable. And then she asks about what happened the other night after the game. So when he's disheveled, clutching the pillow after he had his stomach virus or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he leaves the room. And it's like, all right, cool.
Are we supposed to believe then that they didn't have any sort of session or talk when Ted was in that room? Like Ted was just crying in her office for however long, and then just said we need to set up a session. They didn't have.
Ted was clutching a pillow, disheveled, crying, just had a nervous breakdown, and she was like, "Listen, my calendar's pretty full right now,
tomorrow.
so we're gonna have to set something up." And he's like, "I'll be here first thing in the morning." She's like, "Ooh, first thing tomorrow morning's no good for me. I'm going out drinking with the team. So
Gonna be hungover.
How's Thursday of next month look?" I don't know how much time has passed. They probably said it during the scene, but I did not get the sense that it was the next morning.
No.
And I don't get the sense that they talked at all that night. So maybe Sharon, and they cut this out of the scene, he's like, "I think I need help." What is he? He says something to her that night,
I think it says like, "Oh, I need to set up that
I
appointment."
need to set up the appointment. And she just like slips out of the room and closes the door.
Yeah. And he slept there that night. That was it.
She's like, "Maybe if I don't answer him, he won't know I'm here." Yeah, so that was therapy. We're back on the pitch for training, and Ted is going into this whole thing. Someone's shouting at the team like during drills, and I don't know, it was seemingly another coach.
I think it's like unos dos, like vamos or whatever.
Like
it's like 1, 2, 3,
strength and
go.
conditioning coach.
Yeah.
I felt was speaking in a foreign language, but not Spanish.
It was Spanish.
Okay, well, would you like to bet $5?
I would.
All right, it was not Spanish.
All right.
Okay. And he is telling the team, "Hey, you cannot show them you're tired."
Yeah.
And I feel like this is an important life lesson, just in general.
Go on.
You should never let other people see you like sweat, be tired. You should suffer silently. You should suffer silently.
That is the Julian family motto.
And pretend like it doesn't bother you. Certainly in a competitive environment. Like, that goes volumes. Like, I mean, I don't know if you have this, but have you ever, like, been exercising with someone?
Don't exercise.
Okay. Let's go back in the day. Let's
Okay.
say you were exercising back in the day with someone.
Okay.
And you felt them start to tire. Something inside of you, did it click and go, "I'm going to go harder so that person feels worse about how they feel right now"?
Yeah.
Do you have that gear?
I don't have that gear, but I played with a guy who had that gear, and we all hated him because he would always run like 4 laps past everybody and make everybody else look bad.
There's a gear where you look at someone and you're like, "Oh, they're tired? Yeah, we're going to make it hurt now." So
Ugh.
I have a little bit of that inside of me. Not that I've ever been the most athletic person in the world, but in terms of like endurance and like pain, if I see someone else in more pain, it typically fuels
It makes you feel better.
Speaking of not going to therapy,
isn't this Schadenfreude or whatever? Like you're
taking joy out of someone else's
pain or hatred or something.
Or Schadenfreude. I don't know if you know this, but it isn't my middle name. I've just never been able to pronounce it. Ted brings up the Jerky Boys. Are you familiar with the Jerky Boys, Tom?
I had heard of them, but I don't know of their work.
Well, you have older brothers. You know, your older brothers never introduced you to the Jerky Boys?
I don't think they did, no.
So I was introduced to the Jerky Boys by my oldest brother, like a friend of my oldest brother. They were listening to the tapes. And all it is these guys doing crank calls.
Crank yankers.
Yeah, crank yankers. Yeah. In fact, that's what I was going to correlate it to. Okay. And I'm glad you brought that up because part of it was about like, oh, did the Jerky Boys eventually do a puppet show? But no, they took the idea and Comedy Central did the crank yankers. But yeah, it was 2 guys in like New York and they'd call people up and they'd pretend to be terrible characters and they would just record it. I don't know that you can do that post 9/11 without using without using the Patriot Act or the Freedom of Information Act. Freedom of Information Act. I don't think you can just record people and put it on an album anymore. But simpler times pre 9/11. Anyways, so the Jerky Boys were funny. They are worth. They'd probably be canceled now that I think about them. So I'm not going to endorse them.
Listen, Ted Lasso endorsed them. We can endorse them.
Okay. Well, we see that Ted Lasso's gone a little bit off the rails, so I don't know if that's.
But I do want to say though, like with Ted telling them not to like say they're tired, I think it makes sense in that context of sport because you want to not let the other team know that
project strength towards your opponent.
Exactly. It's like Little Giants, where they intimidation. They put the Alka-Seltzer in their mouth, they foam. Brilliant.
Unforgettable scene. I can picture it in my mind
Yep,
as you bring it up.
exactly. But obviously a clear correlation with what
The kid with the snot bubbles and everything. Oh, good for you.
But clear correlation with what Ted is dealing with in his therapy. He's hiding his feelings. He's bottling it up inside, and we get a couple sequences of that throughout this episode.
See, I never even thought about that, but you're right. And there's a lot of things that happen on the pitch
Mhm.
that are people discovering what is happening in the outside
Yeah.
world, which we'll talk about later when it happens to Roy. But
Because I think there's clever writing in this show. Like Jane, I can't remember the actress's name, but who writes this?
Phoebe Walsh is
Phoebe
the
Walsh.
writer.
There's clever like tie-ins with the stories, but again, I think like we've discussed thus far, there's a lot of just weird character arcs and developments that I just don't think tied together well overall.
Right. The only face you should show is like what face or something like that. And Beard's like game face, baby. Whenever he does the baby. Sorry for blowing out your speakers, but I love when Beard does that. Nate and Beard go with the offense, and is this where they make fun of him? Or they're calling him the Wonder Kid, right?
Yeah, so it
Making
starts
fun
with Rojas. He kind of gives him a Wonder Kid jab, and then it goes to Jamie Tart, gives him another Wonder Kid jab, and then it goes to Colin. Colin tries to do kind of the same thing, and that's when Nate jumps all over him.
There's something about Nate's demeanor, like in the beginning of this, where he's like got his, I don't know, he's like posturing, and it's very like haughty, and I was like, good. I hope they're making fun of you, but I didn't really feel like they were making fun of him. They were just like
giving.
He has a level of like he now has a level of notoriety. He made a good call during the game.
Mm-hmm.
I did not feel like, and I certainly didn't feel like what Colin said to him warranted his reaction when he blew up on Colin.
But I also think watching this scene, I don't think it was that bad. I felt like they were kind of messing with him, and Nate gave it back. In retrospect, like watching it a second time, it's obviously more clear of what Nate is doing. But I thought his joke back, all the other guys laughed. They were having a good time with it. It's not like he said something that was too far or too over the line where everybody's like, whoa.
Right. The only thing he does is he makes Colin sit. He's like, Colin, you don't have to participate in this drill. Which is a little bit strange. Like, why wouldn't you have him participate in the drill? I think he's just trying to, like, crush his spirit a little bit more.
Yeah.
And the thing I did not appreciate is I feel like Beard has an obligation right there to be like, haha, no, Colin, go, like, join the drill.
Yeah.
But, like, Beard is... I know he's not silent the whole episode, but there's certain times Beard just like lets things happen.
Again, Beard's a weird coach. Like we don't see a lot of his coaching per se. Like so, I
don't know how to talk to you.
Yeah.
Or that's a bad Jamie, but I don't know how to talk to you. Then it's working.
Yeah. But I agree. I think his response is weird because like Collins is giving his mantra, like I am a strong and powerful person or whatever he says, and then Beard's just like, cool. Like that's probably not the best response.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Later on, I think there's some lines here that get drawn that Beard eventually steps in for.
Then Sam is in the locker room always looking at Chatterbox or what's the app? Banter. Yeah, whatever. We find out that Sam's favorite film is Ratatouille. How do you feel about Ratatouille? First, give me the synopsis of Ratatouille for the audience that's never watched the Disney masterpiece Ratatouille.
Ratatouille is about a rat that is a little chef. He likes to cook stuff, and then he gets into the hat of a bumbling chef and helps that bumbling chef cook at a famous French restaurant. And then they make sweet French food.
Oh,
and
man.
Ratatouille.
I thought you were going to say love. I was like, oh, man.
No.
That's about what weird.
That's the X-rated version.
Okay. Yeah.
That's, oh, man. I have one lined up, but I'm not going to say it.
Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. Let's move on.
But, by the way, has this show referenced Ratatouille, or we have just referenced Ratatouille multiple times on this podcast?
I don't remember. How often do we talk about Ratatouille?
We've referenced it, I think, at least 2 times in season 1 with Trent Krim writing the article about like his turn for Ted.
Oh, and you said you got Ratatouille vibes from that letter reading.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, the critic writing the Ratatouille food review for this amazing meal. I think it's a similar
I
concept.
wonder if Phoebe Walsh wrote that episode as well. Maybe we should look that one up.
Yeah.
Trent Krim, The Independent.
A better podcast would.
A better podcast would, and we are not called a better podcast. We are not called a better podcast would. We are called Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast.
Exactly.
So we don't have to do crap. I like Ratatouille. The kids really like Ratatouille. I don't think I'd seen it, like, I don't know how old it is, but I had not seen it for like a long time. And it was one of those where my wife was like, "Oh, you haven't seen Ratatouille? You should watch Ratatouille."
Yeah.
And I think I watched it with the kids. So it would have been not that long ago. And it's really enjoyable. And I think Keeley makes a good point. She's like, the whole point of the movie is that art can come from not like snobbish people, but from anywhere.
Exactly.
Then we found ourselves with Rebecca, Keeley, and Higgins. Higgins is awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember when we started this podcast, one of us was Team Higgins, one of us was Team Nate.
Correct.
I was Team Higgins. Nate is clearly a knob. And Higgins is awesome. Higgins is in a long-term loving relationship with his wife. He loves her dearly. He is a very sensitive man, communicates well. He's great. Never done anything wrong to anyone. Not in this season, not in the last season.
Just wait till season 3, man. He's going to have some sort of like drug addiction.
No, Higgins will be the murderer.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going to happen. When this goes detective,
Higgins
is the murderer. Higgins and his
five
boys.
The director of murder operations.
Murder operations. You say murder? Murder. Keeley shares that her and Roy are always together. Good acting between. I really appreciate this. Rebecca and Keeley. Like, Keeley is trying to give Rebecca advice on how to respond on banter. Higgins is just there to be Higgins. And then Rebecca says something about Keeley and Roy being like perfect, and you can see it like on Keeley's face that is it perfect, and like just that their relationship is fun to watch.
And I don't think I would have gotten that from Keeley's expression. Like she said, it was kind of, she's like, "Thank you," and kind of smile, but I didn't necessarily get a sense that there was anything more to it. But I think Rebecca, being a keen and kind and loving friend, saw it and asked her the follow-up question.
So then she starts to not complain, but she starts to voice that her and Roy are always together. Roy enters and he goes, "Why are you jazz scatting?" Which is just so great. And I gotta be honest, I could listen to Higgins and Rebecca jazz scat for a really long time.
It was pretty fantastic.
Oh, it was really good. Like, she's clearly musically talented.
Very.
I don't know if that actor actually plays the stand-up bass, but he played it.
I guess that's true.
And then he has a college story where he like played air, a stand-up bass.
But even him doing the scatting, he's like, I think he is the bass of the scat line.
Right.
It's great.
And then what's funny is after Roy and Keeley leave, they like
2, 3, 4,
and they pick it back up, and it was so good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy Rebecca's voice and her musical talent very much.
It was great.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Keeley and Roy, things get sexual. And this is because Keeley's trying to do work. Roy comes in being all Roy in all of his dark clothes and his dark beard. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to go sit over there and read Da Vinci Code." Because she tells him, she's like, "Go away, I'm trying to get work done." And she finds this so sexual that he listened to her suggestion of go over there and read. And this is the return of Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code. Have you ever read The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown?
My understanding, it is a very sexual book. Is it not?
No.
No. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different book then. I'm thinking about a different book.
No. You're thinking of the book that The Da Vinci Code's based on, the Bible.
Oh, it's kind of sexual.
Extremely sexual.
Okay. I know.
Song of Solomon, baby. Read it.
Okay. I don't think I've ever read Da Vinci Code.
Deer's panting for water and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can't yes and that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not biblically versed.
You didn't take that at improv? You didn't
No.
take Biblical 101
No.
improv?
I suck at that Jeopardy category.
You almost got a spit take. You almost got a spit take on. That's good.
I mean, I've seen the Tom Hanks versions.
You've seen the movies?
Yes.
But haven't read the books?
No.
I read the book. I remember the book. Like Roy says, the chapters are so short you can't put it down.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. But no, it's a really entertaining book. I remember when it came out and all the hoopla around it. But
I didn't have a whole bunch of hoopla. Like, what was the big deal? Was it just like everybody was reading it? It was like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of situation?
Oh man, you've set me up for like what I want to talk about the most. So the Da Vinci Code, if I recall right, the theory was that the Grail, so the Holy Grail, was actually symbolic for Jesus Christ having a child and having a bloodline.
Okay.
And so the hoopla around it was that, Jesus was never married, never had offspring.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes, that's what I'm pointing out. So biblically, Jesus did not have children, but this book and it takes a bunch of biblical code and stuff and is trying to make this connection. And so I know that, let's just call it the Catholic Church, I think had some issues with Dan Brown book. If I'm wrong on any of this, please don't write me. This is the one I don't want to answer letters about. I did that all off of memory, having done no research prior to. I just remember the book being pretty entertaining. Nonsense, but entertaining.
I just remember I had little cryptex and I saw little puzzles, and that was great.
Right, from the movie. The book also has the cryptex, but you don't know what it looks like because it's a book.
You know what movie I like about people running around solving puzzles?
I think I do.
National Treasure.
National Treasure.
It's all American.
There it is. That one is as historically accurate as the Da Vinci Code.
Okay.
Ted returns to therapy. Why does he return to therapy, Tom?
I don't know. Therapy's stupid.
Nope. Why does he return to therapy, Tom?
I want it to be known I'm joking. I don't think therapy's stupid. But he goes to therapy.
You can't explain jokes on the
I
podcast.
have to, because that's a stupid jerk thing to say that therapy's bad. Because therapy helps people.
Therapy does help people. That's why we do this podcast. We can't afford therapy.
This is our therapy as you pour another glass of whiskey.
Hey! Your therapist said not to judge me, okay? I know, because I emailed her. I asked her to say something about it. All right, go ahead.
Ted is he doesn't quit stuff.
He doesn't quit things.
Except marriage.
Damn you beat me to it. Oh, good for you, my friend. All right. Did Ted get a haircut? Did you notice this during this scene?
It's funny, I did not notice this, but I saw it in their outline, and then I rewatched this scene. I'm like, yeah, he probably did. Or they probably
his head is much narrower.
I think what they did is they probably just shot out of sequence.
Right.
So he had a haircut that was fresh.
It was noticeably different to me. I was like, wait, what happened to his head? Oh, it got
narrower.
Puffy.
Sometimes he has and I kind of have that if my hair gets kind of long with my little side part, it gets a little puffy up top. So I think he just had more puff in the first sequence.
Yeah, more puff. That was my nickname in high school.
No, yours was HR puffing stuff.
HR puffing stuff. Ted gets mean and aggressive here. He gets weirdly mean and aggressive. And I was trying to think of all the times that we've seen Ted get mad and why he's gotten mad. And so I started to list them, and I hope you'll help me out. But he gets mad at Jamie for being selfish when Jamie won't put his hand in with the team. You can see him start to get aggressive, and I think it's right before Henry comes in and diffuses the situation.
Yep.
But you can see something starting to snap with Ted. You see Ted get angry when Jamie says he's injured and can't practice, and he goes into the practice rant. He gets mad at Rebecca when she trades Jamie away. He gets a little bit mad. You see it under the surface when Rupert says something to Rebecca while they're playing darts.
Yeah.
He makes some lewd comment towards her, and he's like, hey, be kinder while I'm holding darts. Did you feel like him getting mad at Dr. Sharon was along the lines of when we see Ted getting mad? Did this Were you surprised by this, I guess?
Yeah, I was. I kind of racked my brain as well. Like, where else have we seen Ted like this? And we haven't. And when Ted has gotten mad in other sequences or circumstances, there seems to be a reason for it. Ted's reason in this, to me, he comes to this therapy session with an agenda. His agenda is to crap all over Dr. Sharon and her profession. Like, he was never going
So you
in
think
back into this room.
he's worked up prior to,
Yes.
and the hill he decides to die on, because this is where they talk about the time slot, or he's talking about
the 50 minutes
Right.
versus an hour, how you charge and bill and stuff.
right.
So I think Ted came in here wanting to tell her off, and it was, again, very uncharacteristic of Ted and everything we've learned and his optimistic attitude and all that stuff. And I just don't. I get his pessimism maybe towards therapy and therapists in general from what we saw in the first season and his marriage and everything we discussed in the first season. But none of this is warranted for Dr. Sharon. Like, they've had a good relationship up to then. Like, it was a little rocky to start.
Right.
They've had a good relationship. Why Ted would ever jump off the rails and scream and slam her door is completely out of his character, regardless of other stuff that he's going through. I did not like this sequence.
Right. And one of his things is like, hey, you're only here listening to me or like pretending to care about me because you get paid. Like, that's his other thing. It starts with the time, and then it's, I think this is garbage because you're only here because you get paid. The other thought I had was like, I got it from a show standpoint. He's going to go and see her. But like, you can audition therapists. Like, you can go talk to one and like, the person's not actually listening to you and you feel like you're just wasting their time, go to a different one. Like, find one that you click with that like makes sense. And this, like, I don't know. Part of me was like, I got it. You don't quit, but like running in there and yelling at her and then like leaving and not going, like, you recognize you need help, then go somewhere else. Like, go talk to someone else.
Might have preferred you quit in this situation.
Right.
Like, at least quit with Dr. Sharon if you're not getting. But I think the problem is, like, he's struggling to ask for help, and he's doing it, but he's doing it in a very challenging way, I guess. And Dr. Sharon even mentions it, I think, in the next session.
And the other thing is, we don't see this, like, happening with Ted in other scenes.
Yeah.
Like, he's on the training pitch, he's making jokes. And I understand, like, we can compartmentalize. Like, I think some of us do it really well. Others don't. It's fine. But, like, he is not, like, I feel like in some episodes you can kind of see the progression of Ted getting more stressed, and then he hits a breaking point. This one is like, he yells at the therapist, and then he's somewhere else having a normal conversation with someone. Yeah. And I just don't, like, I don't know. I didn't feel like it made much sense.
Well, and it's how we got here to this point in the last episode where Ted had his panic attack. We talked about in last episode, last pod, but we didn't really feel that was earned. It was just very quick and sudden. And I think a lot of his
all of a sudden he's looking at
his
hands during the game, and you're like, wait, why? What?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so then we're in the hallway. Nate continues to read his headlines on Twitter, Tom. He's looking at Twitter.
Actually, no, he wasn't on Twitter for this one.
Oh.
He was on a website, I think.
How many of the things are there?
I don't know. There's like 3, I think.
Man, isn't meta the only one that matters now?
Yeah, I think he might have been on OnlyFans. They're real big with football commentary. But one of the headlines on the little articles was, is he ready to manage his own team? And I think actually even later, like, he's listening to a podcast or something where they mention, oh, this guy's ready to start his own club. So I like to give us a little kudos because we kind of mentioned that in the last episode about, is this where they're kind of going with his arc here, going and trying to coach other team.
This is what you see in American football. The assistant coach that is with, like, the hot head coach. And I don't mean hot as in, like, physically attractive, although a lot of times that is true. Your Manginis, your Rex Ryans.
Belichick's.
Your Belichick's, clearly. Man, those sweatshirts. But, in this situation, he's, the assistant coach, and they get picked up in American football. So we did predict that. Good for us. Sam and Rebecca bump into each other.
Yes,
and this
very
is a completely...
Sam and Diane.
Incredible. exchange, right? Two people that would normally have this exchange in an office hallway. Everything they say is normal to each other, correct?
Sure.
Oh, man. So...
It's I don't know, it's meet cutish from like the romantic kind of things where they're both staring at the app, hoping the other is going to text them in that app when they talk. But I do love Sam's line where he talks about like, oh, all this technology, yet it pushes us further away or whatever, which is just to the T what exactly their situation they're dealing with.
Right. I hope they end up together, married with babies and all those things, but I just felt like this was a awkward exchange.
Can I say though, like Sam Obasanya, gorgeous smile. That guy's got a smile that can light up a room.
Oh yeah, no, he's great.
Dude, when he's just like sitting there talking to Rebecca, and he's to me, he has like some of that lasso-ness where he's just always happy and like energetic. We had that one episode where he was dealing with his father disowning him,
right?
Which was rough. But man,
they revisited that.
Oh yes, yeah,
they revisited that. They revisited Dubai Air,
of course,
all those things.
But his smile is infectious. I love it.
Listen, if I could have Danny Rojas and Sam as a friend, I don't feel like I would hate on episodes like this because they would remind me that I'm a wounded butterfly. And
we'll get to wounded butterfly.
Okay, wonderful. Nate is in his office. Nate ignores Will. Poor Will.
Yeah.
Poor Will.
Yeah, man. What did Will ever do?
I don't know.
He got him pens, man. They were red pens. How is he going to make all these corrections?
Exactly. Colin walks in. Colin very like, hey man, did I do something to upset you?
Right.
Like what we should all do in that situation. Hey, it felt weird. Like, did I do something?
Yeah.
If I did, like I'm here to apologize or talk it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nate just goes into this whole thing about how Rojas and Jamie are good players. So
they're Picassos.
They're Picassos, but Colin is garbage, so he's not allowed,
Yeah, he's hotel art, man.
Hotel art.
Yeah, I don't know, like this sequence.
Some of the favorite art I've ever stolen from buildings is hotel art. I'll just say that.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. This on my wall in front of you, I stole from
the Marines.
Yeah, I guess that didn't make much sense. Some sort of museum? I don't know. Anyways.
No, but I mean, throughout this episode, they've been, and I think throughout this season, they've been kind of making Nate a little bit, like, unlikable. And I feel like this scene right here is like a turning point for me as an audience member, where Nate is like a villain here. Like, he is purposely, and Beard sees it and calls him out on it here a little bit later, but he is like purposely being mean to him for seemingly no reason. It's just super, super harsh.
Do you feel like, okay, so we have the points where Nate is like a little bit upset at Will for not doing his job.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue at those times, sometimes Nate is right. Maybe his delivery's wrong, but like he like corrects Will on certain things.
Yeah.
Or like Will wants a day off for his mom's birthday or whatever. And okay, so he's a little bit harsh there, but do you really feel like there was like, other than those parts, I don't remember other times where Nate was doing something where I was like, oh, Nate is the villain. Because the restaurant one...
I agree. Yeah, I agree. No, I'm just saying that, like, I think they've been trying to make, like, Nate's character in season 1 and his arc, I thought was just great, and giving him the confidence and all that kind of piece. I think what they've done this season is they've just kind of created these, like, rough edges around him that we didn't see in season 1 that is, like, outside of his character. And I get you don't want his character to become stale and, like, the same thing, but this season, to me, is struggling with a villain. They don't have a Rupert like they did last season. Like, they need somebody to be like a foil to all the characters.
Whoa. Let's not all assume we all thought Rupert was a villain, because some of us really miss Rupert.
Miss Rupert?
Yeah.
All right. Bex was just the worst in season 1.
Yes, she was.
Yes. Doesn't she own half the team now?
Probably. I broke into your... I guess...
Yeah, I got my point across. I think this season's struggling with a villain, and they need somebody to kind of be that heel, and I think they've laid the groundwork a little bit with just Nate being more just rude to people.
Right.
And this is just him going over the end, now that he has some sort of like semblance of fame, if you want to call it that.
It's funny, if you like look at what Nate does, it's not all that terrible. Like, it's certainly not Rupert. As your point, it's not Rupert level terrible.
Yeah.
He's just like kind of a jerk to people. But in the world of Lasso, where you want everyone to be like nice,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that guy's a jerk. Like, as I think about it now, Nate's not doing like anything that we probably haven't all done at some like moment of anger or like I have a temper. Like, I'm sure I've said terrible things.
No.
Not to you, but I could call people in here from the other parts of the house who would probably disagree.
Studio, other parts of the studio.
Other parts of the studio, so at Podcast Village here.
Yep.
But yeah, in the world of Lasso, where you want everyone to,
I just feel like, but yeah, I think that's a fair point. What he's doing is not to Rupert's level, but it's. I mean, there's ways to go about it, and Beard calls him out. Like, you were being mean for the sake of being mean.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing with you what they're doing. What I am saying is just as I think about, like, I don't like Nate right now.
Mm-hmm.
What has Nate really done? Well, he was kind of mean to Colin. He's been mean to Will. Like, he's been mean.
That's fair.
Like, has he murdered anyone? Not that we know
Hey,
of.
Higgins will figure it out.
There you go. Maybe he paid Danny Rojas to kick the ball at that dog.
Listen, his defense is death.
That was the signal. So Beard watches and says nothing. Beard's reading a book, as always. He's in the other office. He watches this exchange between Colin and Nate. Does not say anything. Then this takes us to the boot room. And this is probably where I laughed the most during this episode.
It was good, yeah.
And this is one of those shows where it's almost like, hey, how do we get all the funny people in the room? Or like, how do we get them to interact? Because it's so like segmented. It's tough to do. You can have them all on the training pitch. You can have them in Rebecca's office.
Mm-hmm.
This was fun because Keeley is secretly smoking in the boot room.
Yeah. I just love the concept of people coming in one by one. Like, once the door opens, you're like, oh, who's next?
Right. Hey, what's going on in here? Oh, are we gathering? Oh. So she is talking to Keeley smoking. I think Ted comes in first.
Yeah.
Then Rebecca comes in. Keeley has lied to Ted about smoking. And
Did Ted not understand that she was actually smoking? Did she really think it was like the air
way
freshener?
Ted reacts to things, I just assume Ted has never experienced anything in his life because everything is new to Ted. He's like never understood that like what girl talk is. Anyway, I pointed it out in other episodes where Ted's just blown away by these everyday things we learn. But Ted does not realize Keeley is lying to him. But Rebecca comes in and she's like, oh, this is the room where we've decided that smoking doesn't count.
Yeah, it's a great line.
Which is great. And I'm pretty sure the medical community agrees with that, is you're allowed to smoke in certain rooms. It doesn't count there.
Yep, kit rooms.
Kit rooms.
Or boot rooms? Was it boot rooms?
They call it the boot room.
Okay.
They're using the boots as ashtrays, which is very funny. Because Will at the end dumps out a boot and it's just filled with ash.
In the boot box.
In the boot box. Nice. Rebecca, I guess, is like complaining to them about Roy. And Rebecca says something that I thought was very interesting. And I think we all do this. Mm-hmm. And the quote is, stop auditioning your complaints and tell the person who can actually do something about it. So what she is saying is, stop like complaining to us. Stop like essentially looking for validation of your complaints.
Yeah.
But go talk to Roy. Like, if he's the one that can fix this, if he's the one you have the issue with, go talk to that person. I think we all do this. Now, I think it's healthy to have like a sounding board. Like, hey, do you think if I told my wife this, that she would get mad? And your response is, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't say that out loud. But then I go do it anyways because I'm not very good at this husband thing. But there is a point where like it's like, hey, just go talk to him.
Yeah,
like, go.
That's what Colin did. Colin had a weird thing with Nate,
great point.
And Colin went and talked to him, and boom, solved. Kind of.
It's kind of. Ted brings up, and this is where you made a great point about, hey, Ted's like therapy stuff is happening on the pitch where he's like, hey, pretend it doesn't bother you. You know, act like it doesn't bother you. Suffer in silence. That's probably his house words too. The Lasso house rules are the same as my house rules. We suffer silently. Ted's like, hey, I think there's some good in bottling things up. Like, you don't have to tell someone everything all the time. Bottle it up.
You can bottle pickles, vodka, extra virgin olive oil, and messages. Which messages took people a little bit to get. I got it right away, but they were like, "Oh, message in a bottle," which is the famous song by who, Julian?
Message in a Bottle. I'm gonna get this. Message in a Bottle is Christina Aguilera.
No, I mean she did a song, "Genie in a Bottle," but "Message in a Bottle" is a famous British singer.
Christina Aguilera.
From the Police.
Christina Aguilera.
No.
Oh, Stung.
It's Sting. He
Sting.
hasn't retired yet.
Yes, it's Stung yet. My favorite part of this is that Higgins is smoking a pipe. I don't even know that he's smoking it. We never see him light up. We never see any. He just has the pipe in his mouth.
So are we to understand?
Please ask this question because this is my thought too.
Okay. Are we to understand that maybe Rebecca and Higgins were up in her office, and Rebecca's like, "Hey, where's Keeley?" And Higgins doesn't know, and Higgins like, Rebecca's like, "Oh, she must be in the boot room, so let's go smoke." So then, Higgins like, "Oh, cool, I'll go get my pipe, and we'll go into the boot room and smoke with her." So what did you think?
What I'm realizing now is that this is a common occurrence, so much that Higgins has a pipe on him at all times.
All times.
Just so they end up in the boot room. And this is solidified by the amount of cigarette butts that Will dumps out of the boot when he turns it over. I did not think about it during the episode, but I'm like, oh, this happens a lot for him to have his pipe, for them to have all those cigarette butts.
It's a very classy thing. If anybody in this episode or cast is going to carry a pipe, it's Higgins.
It's Higgins. Then Jamie appears. And his line, I don't know if you caught it, was like, "Hey, can you take my name off this jersey and make it bigger?" Which is so great. Everything Jamie does, I find funny now. He used to be an ass, but now he's just funny.
Well, but I like the way, peppering Jamie in and his comedy that he delivers into the show is so great in these small little bits.
Yeah.
Like, if he has to carry kind of too much, I think you don't like him as much. But, again, love his accent, that he just delivers these lines so great.
He calls Roy a name. He calls him old something. I don't remember what it was. But then when Roy comes in and Roy's like, "Are you all talking to me about it again?" Jamie goes, "Yeah, definitely." He's like, "Yeah, definitely." So Keeley and Roy, they depart from the smoking room. They're back at their house, and Sex and the City is playing in the background. Tom, have you ever watched one episode of Sex and the City?
I am proud to admit I have not seen any Sex and the City.
Yeah, no, I have not seen much of Sex and the City, but they do a very interesting thing here where they are cutting in the scene of Sex and the City.
I have a question.
Yeah,
so
go
do
ahead.
you think it's Phoebe Walsh, right, is the writer?
Yes.
Do you think she was she knew this? I mean, obviously they probably write in committee a little bit, but did she have this scene ready to go from Sex and the City? I always feel it's interesting when they sample shows like this, because do they have to send somebody out and say, "Hey, I remember this one scene in Sex and the City at one point. Hey, intern, go watch every episode of Sex and the City and get me this one scene and section that comes from it."
Yeah, you gotta wonder if she was rewatching Sex and the City, she remembered that scene of, I don't know what the guy's name with, I don't know what the girl's name is. She's
the boss
and
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
It's not Sarah Michelle Gellar, I know that much.
Sarah McLachlan.
But it is a lot of Sarah. It's like three names in a Sarah.
Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
We
got there. And then all you have to do is be like, oh, it was this boyfriend of hers in the show. Mm-hmm. So you could probably she's like, oh,
sections.
Yeah, and so you could probably narrow it down that way. But it's a good point. Was she rewatching it and she saw the scene and she's in the middle of writing Ted Lasso and she's like, oh, I'm gonna take that and add that in, or was it she's writing it? Yeah, I don't know how that comes to be. That would be an interesting question.
I do appreciate two men that have never seen the show trying to dissect the show and say when she has a certain boyfriend. Is your assumption she's had multiple boyfriends throughout the show?
Well, I know enough about the show to know that she, there was a, is she going to go with so-and-so or is she going to go with so-and-so?
I have to ask the question. Is this the same a Diane situation?
Yeah. Well, probably. I don't know.
I stumped you. I think I broke you.
I don't know. Something glitched in my brain. I look forward to all the listener mail we'll get on this one.
I'm sure it was a fine show. I'm not the demographic.
This is okay, so she's watching her show. Roy sits down to read, just to be in the same room with her. And this is a debate I would like to have in terms of when you are defining an activity you are doing with your spouse, not that activity, but like certain activities, like what constitutes doing an activity together? If one person is watching TV and one person is reading, but you are in the same room, is that quality time spent together?
No.
Okay. If you are in the same room watching the same TV program, is that quality time spent together?
Yes, because it's a shared experience.
Okay. If you were in the same room watching the same thing, but you were both on your phones, is that quality time spent together?
No, it's not a shared experience anymore.
Okay. If you were in the same room,
This is fun.
the same show is on, one of you is on your phone, and the other one is whittling, is that a shared experience together?
Whittling?
Yeah, you have a stick with a pocket knife and you're forming, I don't know, a spear.
No, I don't think that's a shared experience either.
Okay. All right. Well, that fixed all that.
Where are we getting with this? I feel like you have an end
No,
going.
what I'm getting at is I find that some people think just being in the same room together is spending time together.
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of with you, whereas if you're doing the same activity together and in the same room, that is quality time spent together.
Yeah.
But like if you're watching a show and the other person's on your phone, I don't think that is quality time together.
It isn't, and I feel like Roy's kind of being a jerk in this scene, like reading his book aloud.
Oh yeah. The loud. If he was just going to sit there, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, if he's just gonna sit there and read his book in front of her, like he doesn't sit on the couch with her, like I don't know, I guess giving her space. I don't know, sits kind of in front of her.
Sure.
Like that's fine, but he's like reading a book. He's like, oh man, he just didn't do that. Like
right.
It's like watching a movie and like somebody in the theater like screaming or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't think he was being great in this sequence.
No, I agree with you. I thought he was just going to sit there and read, but she already looked annoyed when he sat down right there. I feel like she gave him a look like you're not going to read elsewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in the same room, you're both reading books. They're different books. Is that a shared experience?
No, it's not a shared experience.
Okay.
I mean, no.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
You are in the same room.
You're gonna get
You're
me.
both reading books, different books, but you're also making love. Is that a shared experience?
Shared experience.
Okay, good. That's good. All right.
So we've established you can read different books in the same room and have a shared experience.
Yes.
It's a long way to get there, but we got there.
We got there. All right. The scene that's going on with Sex and the City is paralleling what is happening there because he keeps talking and Sarah McLachlan keeps shouting, "Shut up."
Yes.
And you can tell that is what Keeley wants to yell at Roy.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we get to the point where Keeley has a perfectly normal adult reaction where she calmly tells Roy, "Hey, Roy, I'm watching the show. You keep talking. It's kind of ruining me watching my show."
Mm-hmm.
And Roy going, "You're right. I'm going to go into the other room and read." Right? That's what happens.
It's what should have happened.
Okay.
You
remember it differently.
I remembered it differently.
Okay.
I remember Keeley jumping up on the couch and screaming
shouting at Roy.
Shouting at Roy. She starts it off. She comes off hot. And there's great acting here. Like she's shouting hard. Like you get a little vein in her forehead kind of pops out. Like she's really going for it. And yeah, kind of calls Roy out. And then of course Roy then he freaks out saying, "Oh, this is the stuff you've been talking about behind my back? I thought it was just, the other generic banter things that I'm okay with." Like, for him to go off the rails on that, like, I don't know. I get him maybe being upset with how she's presenting it, but Roy's scream at her and running out of the room is never a great solution.
So I thought this was an example of, and I think we all do this when we're in relationships, is like sometimes you ignore something and you ignore something and you put it off because you don't want the confrontation. And then over time, the resentment just kind of builds and builds and builds. And then it gets to a point where you either have to say something or you like throw a temper tantrum. The other thing this reminded me of is like, and I'm not a, you know this. I'm not a marriage expert. Not a javelina. Not a marriage expert. But like, people can't read your mind.
No.
And so like, what's unfortunate is you kind of expect your spouse to like read your mind, and they don't have that superpower. In the same way you can't read their mind, they don't have that superpower.
Yeah, we can't all be married to Chris Angel. He's a mind freak, man.
Or
He's a mind freak.
or David Blaine.
No, David Blaine's he's like a close-up magician. He's not a mind freak.
All right. Well, you didn't read my mind on that joke. So, one of the things I thought was interesting is she's like, "Oh, you're always like in my space. You're always talking to me. You're always turning me on." And he's like, "Oh, you don't want me to turn you on?" She's like, "Yeah, sometimes." And I thought to myself, Tom, you must experience the same issue because you are constantly turning people on. Like, you can't help it. Have you ever had someone scream at you, Tom, stop turning me on? Other than me. Go ahead. I give you the floor. I give you the floor. Take as much time as you like. I spilled bourbon on the desk. Go ahead.
I thought you said a line of Coke.
No, this is a family podcast. It's bourbon.
Oh, you know what?
Responsible.
I can't say I have experienced this as often as one might think from, listening to my amazing voice,
Sultry voice.
seeing me on the couple episodes of season 1 that we had published on YouTube. Go check it out, teambinge.com or other things.
No, that's not how it works.
It's fine. People figure it out. People are smart. No, not as much of an issue as you think, but I appreciate you saying that. Some people say I am the wonder kid of my generation.
You are the wonderkind of your generation, that is for sure. We find ourselves in Nate's office. Beard comes in. No, Beard's there. Nate arrives.
Yeah.
Beard is there. And this is some great, just like, framing, some physical comedy, some fun stuff. Beard says, what does Beard say to Nate? What does he says to Nate?
He says to Nate, "You were rude to Colin. Not just rude. It was personal and weird."
It was personal and weird.
Yep. Which is a fair assessment.
Which is a fair assessment. So Beard finally says something. Nate immediately is apologetic. I think it's a little strange. Nate's like, "Oh, did you tell Ted?" That's a weird thing to like.
Yeah.
I don't know. So he's like, "Do better. The door's behind you." Nate exits and Nate's like, "Wait, this is my office." He comes back. Poof. Beard is gone.
Now, I've always said this. Beard is a bit of an enigma. Is Beard Batman?
Beard is not Batman, but Beard is a magician.
I think he could be Batman.
He might be Batman.
There's no way of knowing.
Well, he didn't use smoke.
He doesn't always use smoke. He could be the Riddler. Maybe he's the Riddler in the next Riddler Batman movie.
The Riddler was a chess guy, wasn't he?
Sure.
Okay.
He banged bishops.
Whoa.
What was the bumping bishops? Sorry.
Oh, the Da Vinci Code, now banging bishops. The Catholic Church is going to cancel us immediately. Thanks a lot, Thomas. All right. Roy and Keeley, they show up separately. And Keeley says hi to Roy. Roy grunts. And this reminded me, I know you don't watch him, despite the fact that I've told you to watch his stand-up so many times. And it really bothers me that you haven't. But if anyone gets the chance on Netflix, I'm sure he's on YouTube as well, there's a comedian by the name of Nate Bargatze. I'll spell it for you. Bergatze. He is very funny. He tells a story, he tells a joke about when you are mad at your spouse and you're kind of giving them like the silent treatment, or you're both giving each other the silent treatment. And his point is like, none of us are so rich we live in mansions, so you have to pass that person. And you pass them in like the single hallway in your house. And you do that like weird, like I'm pretending not to see you or talk to you. Or like he does a bit where like they're watching TV and you come into the room and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Were you watching this? I was just gonna change the channel. Anyways, this is the whole bit about like the silent treatment and ignoring your spouse during an argument, and it's very funny. I haven't done it justice, but watch it. Yeah, Roy. Did Roy even respond? Did he grunt?
Yeah, I think it's what he does. He kind of grunts and just kind of like gives like a little head nod, like he's a big jerk in this sequence.
Yeah, he is. And Keeley, very funny, where she's like, I had porridge for breakfast or whatever she says. It was a little too thick, or I don't know. It was great. Then we're at Ted and Dr. Sharon again. And Sharon explains to him, she makes an argument. She makes a case for her. She's like, hey, you care about your players, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get paid to coach. Does that mean you care about them any less? In the same way I get paid to do this, I care about my patients.
Yep.
I felt like she made a good point. Ted apologizes. And she points out that, hey, self-care can be scary.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this to me is to like we talked last pod about when Ted was in a rough spot, setting up this appointment with Dr. Sharon is making sure they don't go like too comedic with it. Like I wanted to make sure they had a serious conversation, and I thought this was helpful of Sharon addressing this and not having another session where Dr. Sharon is just kind of listening to him vent or whatever else he's going to do. Like she points out Ted being a jerk and calls him out on it. Ted agrees, and then she lets him know like self-care is challenging and it's hard for people to ask for it and take that first step. And the fact that Ted did, I think Dr. Sharon sees that. The fact that Ted keeps coming back. And Sharon even mentions it. Keep calling her Sharon. It's what's her first name?
Dr. Sharon.
She has a first name. I think we know it.
Dr. Sharon.
Doctor, sorry. Doc. When Ted comes in, he's like, oh, I thought you'd be back. And Ted's like, well, why'd you think I'd be back? And it's because you said you'd never quit. And I think Dr. Sharon realizes that Ted is asking for help, and he's asking for help in probably not the best way, but he is, and Sharon knows that that's the first step to therapy and making yourself better.
Right. I just looked it up. Her name is Dr. Sharon Sharonson.
I don't think that's right.
That is right. I looked it up. These are fear-based responses from Ted. This is why he's reacting this way.
He's scared.
He's scared.
And then Dr. Sharon gives a thing. It's like
Dr. Sharon Sharonson.
Sharon Sharonson says, can't be your mentor unless I be your tormentor a little bit first. Or I thought she was going to say, or be your dementor.
Right.
I thought it was going to be a Harry Potter reference.
She says the truth. I think this is where she mentions, hey, the truth will set you free, but it'll also piss you off first. And
Yeah.
Ted's like, oh, sure, your nickname should be the truth. Which would be a dope nickname if you were called.
I feel like that is somebody's. Isn't that like Allen Iverson? Wasn't he known as the Truth? Or wasn't like a basketball player known as the Truth?
Practice?
We're
talking about Practice?
Somebody was.
I don't
think
so. Nate apologized to Colin in front of the team. The team forgives him. They're all very kind. What I thought was funny here is like clearly Colin, after that exchange with Nate of Nate being a jerk, he went back to his teammates and were like, I just talked to Coach Nate, and this is what he did. And, like, you can tell if Nate hadn't have done something, the team might have turned a little bit.
Yeah.
So, good on Nate for, I guess, recognizing that he needs to apologize, although the only reason he did it is because Beard called him out. So
he wasn't going to.
Right. And this is where Rojas says, calls him a wounded butterfly.
Yeah, we get some different names. Like, I think he calls him Prick.
They're jerk, like, you acted like a jerk, a prick,
butthole,
and it's like a wounded butterfly.
Wounded butterfly has some. I won't go into it, but the way like Nate reacts to it, and I think the way Danny says it, it has some sexual connotations. Like, if you want to know more about that, check it out on Urban Dictionary. But
I never recommend anyone go to Urban Dictionary.
I chuckled when I looked it up on Urban Dictionary, but it's not necessarily the most appropriate thing. And I'm not sure. I'm assuming the show knew what it meant or that it had other context.
Oh, I thought, well, knowing Danny Rojas, I assumed he meant he acted like a wounded butterfly. You think Danny Rojas is a Urban Dictionary?
I don't think he necessarily is, based on what it potentially means. It has some correlation.
You think it's a wink from the show?
Yeah, I think it has some correlation with Fanny from a previous episode, and the other like words that were said are in the same vein of this.
Okay.
I don't know. This is not probably great podcasting.
No. This is fun. This is how we get the old mature rating from Apple. So thank you for that. We will all be wounded butterflies. Ted says something about beef chunks with me, or he's like, beef chunks with me. Beef chunks. Look that up on Urban Dictionary, my friend. and peas and carrots with Roy. And it's very funny because, once again, this is a moment where Beard is the only one that knows what Ted's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just one of those callbacks of how close these guys are. And so he's got to be like, all right,
First teamers
first
with
team
him.
second team with Ted.
I think Ted is trying to bring it in with his like previous line because he's talking about like, oh, beef stew. We go, it's like leaving that stew overnight after watching Citizen Kane after having too many beers. So
Right.
He kind of already has like stew on the mind. So
He's
I feel like
got-
beef chunks, carrots, peas.
He's got stew on the brain,
Yep.
just like phallus.
Yes.
Just like phallus. Whistle. I said whistle.
This is a great Roy coaching right here.
Roy, rather than carrying a whistle, says whistle. I said whistle.
I loved it so much. I almost wish they didn't like have a joke with it. I almost wish he
Sure.
just said whistle and then they had the exchange. It was great.
Yeah, because the joke is he's got some issue.
His lips are sensitive to impure metals and it gives his mouth hives.
Buy a pure silver whistle. Roy, you got the money. You're rolling around in that Land Rover, Range Rover, whatever it is.
I'm not sure Roy could be a werewolf.
Oh!
This could be pointing us to Roy being a werewolf.
All right. Jamie and Roy get in a disagreement, and this is Roy yelling at Jamie because he does something during the play. I think it's with Bumbercatch. So Bumbercatch has got to do something, or like Bumbercatch gets the pass, and Jamie departs the area, and he's like, I'm pulling my defender away.
Mm-hmm.
And Roy's like, no, you got to support your teammate and be right there with him. Which seems like fundamentally, I'm not a soccer guy. I watched one game with you the other night where we lost. And that was probably the most soccer I've ever watched. I got to say, I enjoyed it. It was great. It was nice having your commentary there. You did a great job. But I felt like I understood Jamie's point much better than Roy's.
Well, I mean, in the play, in the sequence they set up, like if Jamie would have stood there, I think it might have been Collins or I don't know, Collins Bumbercatch, who had the shot. They messed up the shot or whatever. But if he didn't clear the space, he wouldn't have even had that opportunity. So Jamie is 100% in the right.
Right. I don't know who it was, but I do know it wasn't O'Brien or Zorro. That's what I know.
Yes.
So Jamie argues that he needs to get. Oh, it's Richard. Got it in the outline.
We're both wrong.
Jamie argues that he needs to give Richard space to pull his defender away.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jean Moss gets in there. Jean Moss.
Yeah, we get him.
There were several times during the episode I enjoyed Jean Moss. I'm not saying it right. Jean Moss's commentary.
Yeah. But yeah, like Jamie says something about like, we kind of learned that from Pep. So it's a reference again to Pep Guardiola, the coach for Man City. And then Jan Moss kind of corrects him. He's like, oh, no, you got that from Cruyff. And I'm probably butchering the announcing of that name. But Cruyff, like Johan Cruyff is a famous Dutch player.
Okay.
So that's like, Johan is the Dutch player for the team who's very...
Jan Moss, right.
Sorry. Who's very like direct and stuff. He like corrects, Jamie's English accent pronunciation of it, which was pretty good. But it was a good quick catch.
He says something like, okay, Englishman, or something like that. And this is essentially Jamie's like, hey, I've got to trust my teammate. I need to give him space to make the play. And this is just how TV works. Not how the real world ever works.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, Roy is relating, giving space, and trusting your teammate to his relationship with Keeley, which I felt like was a huge leap. Good for Brett Goldstein getting me there because his acting...
You didn't get it from the sequence? Like, I thought they were like very clearly trying to relate this to Roy, and when they talk about giving him space, I'm like, oh, boom, there's the correlation.
Right, but I didn't feel like... We see Roy angry in the parking lot, and then all of a sudden he's making the connection in practice. Like, they laid it on thick in practice. Like, I got it. But it was kind of like, Roy didn't realize... I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
He needed
it's
this.
Showism.
Yeah. He needed this to be able to realize. But I think we could both agree, it's just some amazing, just like head tilt acting here, where he kind of like, he's looking down, he looks up, then he looks to the side. He like multiple realizations as he looks, and then just screams the F word and runs off the scene.
Essentially, like, oh, Keeley needs space.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, we needed a soccer player like to get to there.
I do appreciate Jamie's reaction. It's like, I didn't even do anything wrong this time.
I didn't say anything wrong. Nate gets a Wonder Kid jersey from the team. They're like, hey, this would have been weird had you not apologized to Colin, but we got it for you anyways.
Yeah.
We find out that it was Will's idea. And I was like, kind of a nice gift. Kits are expensive. Like, this one's got a personal... I guess the thing that Nate is mad about is that he misspoke and said Wonder Kid instead of
But that's
Wunder Kid.
That's everything that Nate's been seeing online. Is like when he scrolls through his Twitters, it says #WonderKid.
Right.
So like he's like, if he hasn't embraced that yet, like he's manufacturing this because he wants to be, I think, feel powerful in these moments. I thought after this sequence was over, he was immediately gonna like scream at Will and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of surprised they waited till later in the episode to do it.
Oh, you thought he was going to yell at him in front of the team?
No, not necessarily from the team, but like after the team kind of broke, I thought he was going to pull Will aside and say, "Hey, this isn't funny" or whatever, and just kind of be a jerk. But they saved it for the end.
I don't know. I didn't when I was like, oh, that's cool. They got him a kit like with this thing on it. I didn't.
It was nice. It wasn't a jerk move.
Right.
It was a nice thing for Will to do as the kit man who clearly puts the names on all the backs of the jerseys. He could have made it a little bit bigger. That would have been nicer. Jamie would have appreciated it.
Jamie Tart. Ted is then in the pub, the Anchor and British. I don't know what it's called.
Anchor and Crown.
Trent Crimm shows up. Trent Crimm wants to get a quote from Ted about why he left the match early. Ted's like, hey, I thought everyone knew I had food poisoning. This was a weird exchange, which makes me think we're telegraphing something for Trent, right?
Something, I feel like whatever quote, and I don't think Ted said anything too crazy, but whatever quote Ted gave to Trent here is going to come back to haunt him in some form or fashion, is the way I took that.
Well, the only thing Ted says to him is like, hey, I got food poisoning, I was sick, but now I'm like right as rain, or he says something about being fine, and Trent's like, okay, like writes it down and leaves. But I mean, this was so out of place that you're like, okay, they're telegraphing something here.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, I'm sure we'll go back and see this scene. I'm like, oh, that's why they did it. But like, in one instance, I'm kind of like, maybe they just wanted to get Trent Crimm, like the actor, back on scene because he's going to come back later in the series. They should
give him all the scenes.
They should. I was listening to Trent Crimm talk, and I'm like, he would have made a great Loki.
Yeah, I see it.
But I think they're trying to remind us that Trent Crimm is still a presence in the show, and even if this sequence and the quote and all that stuff doesn't come back, I think Trent Crimm is going to come back in some form or fashion in these last couple episodes.
But Trent Crimm and Ted at this point, I know there's like journalistic integrity and his responsibility to tell the story, but they're boys at this point. So like,
he's independent, Julian. He's Trent Crimm of the Independent because he is independent. He's an independent thinker.
So that's fine. He can be an independent thinker, but like, I felt like this set it up for like Trent is gonna like a gotcha moment.
Gotcha
journalism, like Joan from Parks and Rec, whatever her name is. Not the Gotcha Girls. Anyways, I felt like that's what he was kind of doing, but Trent and Ted are boys. Like, I feel like Trent would have given him more of a heads up if it was going to be headline, Ted left game because he had mental breakdown because his son left lunch at his field trip. Subtitle, a Michael Scott story. Like, I don't like he's gonna give Ted a heads up, right? He's not just gonna
like. I think we established in the first season that
Ted needs therapy. Great, Trent, you're a jerk. Like,
I think we established the first season that Trent is not that kind of writer. And if he were to if that really is what the story's going to say, and Trent's going to do some kind of gotcha journalism in the last couple episodes of the season, I feel like that's unwarranted. Like, there was gotcha journalism that was done in the first season, but it was not Trent's. It was the like other characters,
right?
Like the paparazzi and everything else.
Right. I don't know. It just felt weird. I hope it doesn't become me hating Trent.
I think it was out of place. I think it was just they could have cut this scene. They did not need this scene for anything. I think this was just them reminding us Trent Crimm is a character.
Oh, I feel like it's gonna next episode. This is gonna come up. You don't feel like this is gonna come up in the next episode?
I mean, I can go both ways, but I hear your point. Like my initial thought was his quote is gonna come back to haunt him. That was my thought. But now that we kind of talked through it, I almost think it's just Trent Crimm going to be more prominent in future episodes, so they wanted to let you know he's still alive.
So, with that knowledge, the thing that scares me the most, the thing that
keeps you up at night,
keeps me up at night, thank you, is the fact that Keeley is running around in these clad pants pajamas. I'll pronounce that again. These cloud pants pajamas. She comes into her place and she is in, like, she went to work in PJ pants that are clearly a blue sky with clouds.
You're just jealous you can't pull it off, man.
It's not that at all. It's just, I'm so confused by Keeley's wardrobe. She's such a beautiful woman. She's a beautiful actress. Once again, she's like the sixth Spice Girl that didn't make it on the team, and that's how she dresses.
Listen, she has a different fashion sense than you. And one would argue
most people
it's a lot better.
Tom, most people have a different fashion sense than me. We can't all
She
wear.
does not shop at Goodwill.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Well, that is hurtful, but whatever. All right. So Keeley finds a packed bag at the front door, which they don't even explain. Like, you'd think someone would say something.
It was weird. Like, they tried to set it up like, yeah, she's packing a bag because
Roy's
leaving,
right.
like, blah, blah, blah. But what I would argue, we find out Roy's leaving for 3 hours?
Sure.
What is he packing a bag for 3 hours for?
It's a body. There's a body in that bag.
I don't think it's that big of a bag, though.
Chopped up.
Wow.
Well, if you see how you can slice and dice a body, you can fit in a duffel bag.
Okay.
Ask Robert Durst. All right. That's
you made it too real. You should have went Dexter. Dexter's fake.
Dexter is fake. Robert Durst is not, but he is in prison, so that's something. Roy makes a bath for her. And what I felt was a bath that Roy's like, hey, here's a chore. You're going to have to clean up all these rose petals when you're done.
Blowing all these candles.
I thought Roy was going to tie her shoes again. That's what I thought. There was like a very, sensual moment where he's helping her undress.
It wouldn't have been right for the scene, though. I mean, the whole idea of this is to give her space.
Right. You need to take shoes off to get into a bath.
We need to let her tie her own shoes.
Sure.
In this sequence.
That's fair. That's fair. So many rose petals.
Yeah.
The funny part was when he's like, I went into your neighbor's rose bushes and destroyed them.
And put them all in his bath.
That was so funny.
It is very like movie trope-ish or TV show with all the rose petals. And it looks great. But very impractical. I actually have done a romantic gesture where I got rose petals. I'm like, oh,
for who? Wasn't for me.
It was for my wife.
Oh, that's fine.
And I got like, I'll get a dozen roses. I'll put the rose petals. I'll have it like, walk her up to the front steps or something. And then I got a dozen roses and I only got to like maybe 5 feet of roses. And I realized, man, you need a lot more roses to do this gesture. So I had to sprinkle them very far apart. To the point where you maybe thought like, man, he just dropped some roses, but it was a thought that counts.
Oh, that's incredible. Oh, that's incredible. Your wife is a lucky lady, and I'm sure she enjoyed that one petal a step as she moved through the house. We discover that Keeley has gross feet, Tom.
Yeah.
This was a funny bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just Roy recognizing that he's like, your feet are a tragedy or something like that.
Well, and that's what makes it so much nicer that he's been willing to tie her shoes.
Tie her shoes as often as he does. Good for him. Here was my nitpick in this scene.
Go on.
Everything else I loved. The candles not setting off the fire alarm.
Nope.
The amount of petals that it took. The neighbors getting there. What bothered me is that bath water is never at a temperature where you can just slide into it.
Yeah, you got to constantly keep adding some warm.
No. It's always too hot, so you've got to like ease your body into it because otherwise you lose flesh.
You're drawing your baths wrong, my friend.
I don't draw my own baths, but whoever is drawing my baths is doing it wrong. I would agree. And actually, this whole podcast, the whole point is to get to this where I wanted to inform the person that has been drawing my baths, you've been doing it wrong. Okay. So we won't be doing any other episodes after this. This is the whole reason A season and a half later, I just want to tell the person who's drawing my bass
This
the
was it.
temperature's been wrong.
All right, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom,
Skit scat, scoot, skit scat, scoot. I can't do it. All right. Nate reads a negative post about himself. We cut from the bath. I'm sorry, Nate is not in the bath with Keeley and Roy. I want to make sure those of you that haven't seen the episode and are listening to us, Mel, Nate reads the negative post and he walks in. And I thought it was interesting. They do this where it doesn't show the confrontation. It just shows Nate
Kinda the
going into the
aftermath,
room.
yeah.
You hear him say to Will, if you ever do anything like this again,
Mhm.
I will ruin you. And then he leaves, and then Will comes and shuts the door, and you just feel bad for Will.
Yeah, and this is where I think I said it poorly in the beginning, but this is where I appreciate...
Tom, you've never said anything poorly.
Thanks, pal. It's full of friends.
Yeah.
Thank you for believing in me.
I don't understand. But okay.
I appreciate what they're trying to do with this and like Nate's struggle with dealing with social media, because I do think there's a lot of people that like I try to make it a point to really never look at comments. Like I have Twitter and I'll go on Twitter and look at stuff, but I'm never really seeing people's call and response stuff because you just go down rabbit holes and the internet is just unfortunately filled with a lot of hatred. And what I don't like about what they've done with this sequence is Nate's been on his phone for like this entire episode and seemingly last episode as well. So it's been a handful of days. The idea that Nate hasn't seen any sort of negative comment about himself until this very moment is laughable. It just doesn't make any sense. And even the thing that pushes him over.
You think because more negative things should be said about Nate. You are firmly in the camp of everyone should be saying negative things about Nate.
I wish the internet was a more happy and joyous place, but unfortunately it's just not what we have, especially the dumpster fire that is Twitter.
Sure.
So, and what Nate gets called, like the guy just like calls him a loser and says like hashtag not my wonder kid, which I thought was kind of a funny hashtag.
Oh, is that a hashtag we can use?
Yeah.
Can we use that when we post our episodes?
We will. Hashtag not my wonder kid. So it's tame.
Trending.
It's tame for what you see on the internet. And
you mean people say worse things than that on the internet, Tom?
Believe it, they do, man. Believe it, they do. I know you are wise enough to stay off of most social medias, and I think it's probably better for your mental health.
Yeah, look how my mental health's doing. I'm great.
Crushing it.
This bottle's empty.
But again, I appreciate the overarching idea, what they're doing, but unfortunately, I think what we've seen more so in this season than what we saw in the first is characters making decisions that don't seem to be within their character or writing that's going too fast to develop what they're trying to tell in this overarching story. So I think we're in agreement this season hasn't been our favorite thus far, but I mean, there's still time. We'll see how they kind of wrap it up.
I had a lot of love for season one. Season one to me was all about Ted Lasso, like his philosophy, like a positive influence in like a pandemic world, a like politically weird world. So like that's why I love season one. Season two feels like you said, they don't necessarily have an enemy, like things were kind of fixed in season one. I wish what they had done with season two, I'm going to pitch this as an idea to you, and you can tell me what you think. I wish what they would have done is taken the team and like, not every episode, but gone into different players, what they were dealing with, and like how Ted would coach them from like a personal standpoint.
Yeah.
So
kind of have like bottle episodes, like each episode would potentially see like how Ted's impact on them personally and professionally.
Because that's what you love about Ted. You love how Ted makes people better. And so I understand like that Ted himself has like personal issues. No one's a hero. No one's perfect in real life. So I understand what they're doing there. But what would have been interesting is to go into like the Bumbercatches or the Zorros and like give us backstory on them and like how Ted, could help them and stay on that positive vein, rather than this season, which we seem to be like meandering, and the villain is now Nate, and before the villain was
It's kind of like Rebecca, but then like not a villain per se, but she was like the push and pull to Ted. Ted's trying to do something. Rebecca's kind of like pooping on most of his like ideas, but then you had Rupert that kind of comes over and he's like the Thanos of villains. Like he's the big bad that everybody hates.
And then this season you're like, oh, Dr. Sharon's the villain. She's going to be the one that comes in. Well, actually therapy's good. So and she's helping people. So how is she the heel? And then it's like I don't know. I just felt like there was a way to do this, which, I haven't seen the whole season. So maybe we land this, but I do feel like the reason I love the show is Lasso and his outlook. And so once you like remove that, I become less passionate about this. And it's not to say it's not good. I'm not entertained, but I don't think I feel the same like I don't know, profound kinship to who Ted was in the first season as I do in this one. So interested to see where they go. Still enjoying the show. I mean, the things I will always love is Jamie. Jamie is now just like a funny character that happens. Roy's great. And when Ted is not doing physical comedy on a therapist's couch, I enjoy. I do wish they'd have Bearded more. I don't know. I feel like Beard is kind of relegated to every once in a while.
Well,
but
and Beard and Ted don't have that same dynamic that they used to. They don't have the little walk and talks where they're talking about like the English, British, like isms and stuff. That was really fun. Like I don't think they've done any of that jokes. Like that was another thing that I really loved about season 1 that we're not getting enough here. Like I get the idea of exploring a lot of these dramatic elements of these characters you're going through. But it's not that fun-loving show that I think we and you fell in love with and brought me into it. Again, I still I like recording this podcast. I like talking through the characters and the kind of the stuff with you, but it definitely has been a different journey thus far.
Okay. Well, we will be back for season 2, episode 8, and Tom is going to tell us that episode name, but while he's thinking of that name, which he knows already because it is established, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We do get your emails. We appreciate the emails. We are also on Twitter. We would be more active on Twitter if Twitter wasn't so negative all the time.
Yeah. Hashtag not my Twitter.
Hashtag not my wonder kid.
Yes.
Maybe. But we're at Team Binge, and then we have a very well-maintained Facebook account, meta account, which is called something. And with that, we'll be back next week to talk about season 2, episode 8, which is called,
I think, Where We Are in This Season right now, and we don't really know where we're going. I'm going to channel my inner Elsa and say we are Into the Unknown is the name of the next episode.
Okay, so that episode is called Seeing as How We Don't Know Where We're Going and We Don't Know What's Going to Happen, I'm going to channel my inner Elsa, and it will be called Let It Go?
No, Into the Unknown.
I'll start from the beginning. I will not. Thank you.
It's like the title of your article. It just goes on for days.
Oh, man. I thought I had it. Thanks for listening. I have been Julian.
I've been Tom. Thanks for joining us, everybody. 3, 2, 4, 1. Skit, scat, scoot.
I'm leaving it all in.
I know. I'm hoping you do.
Man, we've come so far from episode 1 where you counted us in and didn't scat. All right, we're ending this. You're done.
Boop, boop.